everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some battered fish, battered cod, some home fries, so fish and chips, a coleslaw, and some honey cornbread. Because last time I made it, everyone just loved it, and my oldest daughter has been asking for cornbread every single day. So I said I'd make it with the fish and chips tonight. So I'm gonna cut my little potatoes here, kind of make like a little chip, kind of like wedge on them. And we're going to kind of roast these up in the oven, and we'll season them up with some flour, seasoned salt, and a little bit of oil to get them nice and kind of crispy. So kind of like a French fry, and have a little kind of batter on them. Will just be delicious. And then I'm going to make a homemade tartar sauce because you can't have fish without tartar sauce. And homemade tartar sauce is way better than anything you get from the store. And it's actually pretty simple to make, and it doesn't require that many ingredients, but it is so much better. Okay, so we're going to get these. And I'm just doing 2 really big russet potatoes because you can get a lot of, French fries out of 2 potatoes. And since Teddy can't have any, crunchy food, and Evie doesn't like potatoes, I know that's insane, but the only potato that she likes is salt and vinegar chips. That's it. She doesn't like any other potato done in any other way. There we go. Okay. Just going to get these little butt ends off. And my bowl's right here. I'm going to put them in my bowl. We're going to coat them with a little bit of olive oil, seasoning salt, and some flour. Coat them up, and then we're going to lay them out on our baking tray so that they can kind of crisp up nicely. So we're going to coat it in about a tablespoon of olive oil. We've got a bunch of bottles of olive oil that are down with like just a little bit left in them. Before I open up my new one, I'm always really bad about like getting and using up before I open up another one. And then you have so many like half empty bottles. And then we're going to add in about a tablespoon or so of flour, kind of a big, we'll do a little bit more. So maybe closer to 2 tablespoons of flour. And this is going to help bind those flavors on. And then we're going to just use some Lowry seasoning salt or seasoned salt. This has like a really lovely kind of savory flavor to it. And we're just going to do a shake over, probably about a teaspoon or so. And then we're just going to go in and coat these up with our flour, that oil, that seasoned salt. So they all have that lovely flavor on them.
You have a question? How's Teddy feeling today?
He's doing pretty good. I mean, it's been kind of crazy getting him to drink because he doesn't like to drink any liquids. So I've been setting my watch for like every 5 minutes to have him take a sip. And we're getting there, but he's doing well. I also couldn't get him to take his like Tylenol and Motrin. That's all he can have until I got a little hack here. He loves honey, so I smashed up some chewable Tylenol and chewable Motrin instead of the liquid because he would not take the liquid. And I crushed it up and I mixed it with a teaspoon of honey. And he was like, I like my honey medicine. And I'm like, perfect. So at least he's now taking it, because last night and this morning he was refusing it and he was in so much pain. But
a modern spoonful of
yes, essentially the modern spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Yes. Okay. What? I'm like the modern Mary Poppins. I've got tricks up my bag. Although, you never knew if she cooked or not, but I bet you she would have been a good cook. Okay, we're going to spread these out. And you want to just make sure they're all touching your tray so that they get like that crispy edge. That bottom edge will be your crispiest one, which will be delicious in here. And I try not to stack them on top of each other, as little as possible, because those will be more of your less than chewy or crispy chips. So use your big tray. I thought, oh, 2 potatoes I could get down with one baking sheet, but this is kind of cutting it close. But I did manage to get them all in here with a little bit of Tetris. Tetris. There we go. Okay, let me wash my hands. And we're going to pop these in the oven and we're going to let them start to bake up. I'm doing them at 350 because that's what my cornbread is going to cook at. But you could cook these at 425 on an air fryer setting for about 15-20 minutes and they'd be perfect. We're going to do them in the oven. It will do a little slower, but it will still get them nice and crispy. Just takes longer. Okay. I'm not going to set the timer. I'll set the timer when I put my cornbread in. So let's make our cornbread now, because I will say this has been, the kids just absolutely love this cornbread. I'm a sweet, like, cornbread girl and I love it. So this has honey and sugar in it. And it's just absolutely delicious. So we're going to start with buttermilk, which I never have buttermilk on hand, but you can do a hack. Use about 3/4 cup cream, a half a cup milk for 1 1/4 cups, and then you squeeze in some lemon juice, and it will give it a nice little curdle. It'll give it that sour flavor that buttermilk has. But you don't have to buy buttermilk, because who buys it? Like, unless you're buying it for a specific recipe, it's never in your house. But don't fret, you can easily do things with it. So we've got our butter in here, and now we're going to add in our melted butter. So this is 1 stick of melted butter, so a half a cup. We're going to add this to our milk here, or our buttermilk.
You have a question? The flour on the potato wedges, does that make them crispier?
Yes, it's crispy and it gives you more flavor. It really binds them. So it's kind of like if you've ever had those seasoned battered fries, that's what it does. And I will say it makes the best fry. And then I need 2 eggs, which I forgot to grab out of my fridge. So let me grab my 2 eggs real quick. So we've got 2 eggs going in here. And we're starting with all of our liquid ingredients. And then, well, that was fun. Make sure I didn't drop a shell in there. Let's get our next one in. Hopefully I don't drop it this time. There we go. So we got 2 eggs into our mixture. And then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of honey. Now, I really never measure my honey out. I just kind of give it a good squeeze and I'm like, that's a tablespoon. So I find like 1 good squeeze on here. It's great. You can add a little extra or a little less. It's not going to make much of a difference to it. And then we are going to add in our sugar, and we need 2/3 cup of sugar. And I use granulated sugar, although I'm thinking about, it's so good, I don't necessarily want to change it up, but I almost feel like brown sugar would be even better with this. So I might try it up with brown sugar. So that might be a future, things. My husband's like, oh, want to try it now with brown sugar? I don't know. Brown sugar might be too moist. I'm going to try it up. Not this time. We'll make it in the near future and I'll try it up. But
Was that raw honey?
that is, yes, it is raw honey. It's from Costco. I have to say, I'm a picky person when it comes to honey. It doesn't always taste the same. It can also have different colors depending on where the bees got their flowers from. But there are some honeys that I do not like. And I didn't realize I was a picky honey person until I was like, I made something with this honey once and I was like, gosh, this tastes weird. And it was the honey. We ended up throwing the whole jar away because we did not like the taste of it. It was just like a musky honey. Must have been from a weird flower. Wasn't from the good clover flowers. Or I've read up in the place where you can get blue honey because the nectar or that the bees drink from these flowers turns their honey blue. And I'm like, really think that would be so cool to have blue honey. Okay, we're gonna mix this guy, all of these kind of liquids together. Make sure you get those egg yolks mixed up. And then kind of cream in that sugar and that honey. And these are gonna be your delicious sweet cornbread, not a spicy cornbread or a plain Jane one. It's got to have it sweet. I always hate it when I see like on the menu in place and they're like, oh, cornbread. And then it comes and it has jalapenos in it. And I'm like, this is not cornbread. There we go. So we've got our sweet base to it. Now let's add in our baking soda and our salt. So for our baking soda, we are going to use a half a teaspoon, and this is going to work with the eggs in our mix to give it its nice little rise. I'm just going to make sure I don't have any clumps in my baking soda. There we go. So a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then we need a half a teaspoon of salt. And if you were to use unsalted butter in the butter part, you'd probably want to add like a fourth of a teaspoon more. So like 3/4 if you use unsalted butter, because you really need that.
Got a question? Powder or soda?
This is baking soda. So we want that extra pump with that rise. Baking powder wouldn't give us as much of a puff. So we're going to give this a good mix up. And then we're going to add in 1 cup of cornmeal and 1 cup of flour. And that is the basis for it. Now, when they're done baking, well, actually, I've got to drizzle my honey and my butter. So I was going to say, when we're done baking, you drizzle them with honey and butter, but you actually drizzle them before and after with honey and butter. So I'm going to get my honey butter melting up here, my butter, and we're going to put 2 tablespoons of honey in, and you're going to let it melt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush the tops of our cornbread with these, and then when they come back out, you brush them again. There we go. That's like 1 tablespoon. Give it a good squeeze. That's like 2. We're going to let that melt up. And that's going to give it, actually, check that. I'm thinking of my honey butter rolls, which is there. So this is when we do it at the end, we're going to poke it and brush it. I don't know why I thought we're there. My buttered rolls that I make, my honey butter rolls, I do, I coat them with the honey butter first, and then we bake them, and then I do a second coat. But these, we do not do that. I need a cup of my cornmeal. Let me grab a cup. You want to use yellow cornmeal. I had no idea that they had white cornmeal, but I remember we sent my stepdad out to buy cornmeal to make cornbread when I was in high school. And he had like a list of like not very many ingredients, like 10 things. And he came back with the weirdest version of every single one of them because he normally doesn't go. But one of them was like white cornmeal. And white cornmeal might be great for some things like a tortilla or whatnot, but for cornbread, it's not sweet enough. And so you won't, then your cornbread is lacking a little bit of flavor as well as the color. And then we're going to add in a cup of the flour. Here we go. And those two work together to kind of make the whole batter of it. And then we're going to spoon it into my mini loaf pans because I like to do mini loaf pans because it cooks up faster and it keeps it more moist. You can also do muffins with this. And if you wanted to do a big loaf pan or a big pan, like a 9x9, you could do that, but it's going to take longer to bake. So there we go. We're just going to mix it until we've got all of these ingredients kind of incorporated. I don't want to mix it too much. I want it to be lumpy. This is a butter base, so if you mix it too much, then you're going to get a stiffer product. Okay, let me oil up my mini loaf pan. And you really want to spray these things so they like slide out nicely. And then we're going to fill each one up. And then we'll go back over and make sure. Now, when I fill them up, I'm going to fill them up as high as I can with my batter because I like them to have this nice big domes on it. And these are going to take anywhere between 22 and 25 minutes to bake up, which will give us the perfect time to make the rest of our meal and will be absolutely delicious. Now, if you're like me, and I'm the only one in my family who likes it, but if you like corn in your corn muffins, you could add in about a third cup of frozen corn, like that's, or even canned corn that's been, brought to room temperature, and that will add the corn in it. My husband's giving me faces like, you're crazy.
We'll put peas in it.
No, that's insane. Turn off my honey butter. I'm going to let it sit. And we're going to finish scooping these out. I know my daughter, she was like, this morning, she was like, can you make me cornbread right now? And I was like, no, I'm not making cornbread at like 8 in the morning. That's crazy talk. But I promised her I would make it tonight. She was craving it last night. She wanted cornbread. She wanted me, after she ate my delicious dinner last night, she wanted me to make her some cornbread as well. And I was like, I hear that you have a craving, but I'm not making cornbread at 11 o'clock at night. Okay, just about have these, and then I'm just going to clean them up. I say clean it up before you bake it because that stuff will be on there and it'll be hard to clean up afterwards. So just grab a paper towel and kind of scoop around. Yep.
You have a request for the ingredients for the cornbread?
Yes. So we will upload this video on our page so you can look at it. And then I do have this recipe card out. It's for our members if you're interested in there. But it's really, what?
The recipe card's tomorrow.
Oh, the recipe card's out tomorrow. I made the recipe card for this, but it's coming out tomorrow for our members. So that'll be there. But the video is also a great way to get the recipe in there. But it's just simply sugar, buttermilk, cornmeal, flour, honey, butter, eggs, salt, baking soda. That's it. Really simple. But delicious. Okay, we're going to pop this in the oven and we're going to let it bake for, I'm going to put it in there for about 23 minutes. It can go anywhere between 22 and 25. But last time I baked these, they were right around 23. Well, maybe I'll do 22. We'll see. And give me a minute to get over here. I'm going to move my fries down because I always want my baked goods to take precedence and have the top of the oven. That's going to get the best heat and the most equal baking. I'm going to set it for 22. I'll do 22 minutes and 22 seconds. So in between. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Got that. I did not turn off my oven. I have been having a problem with that recently. And then when those come out, the best part is we're going to take our honey butter that we have and you're going to kind of poke the tops with a fork and then you glaze it and you let that butter run into it and it's delicious. Okay, let's make up our batter. Then we'll let it kind of sit for our thing. I need my flour and this. So this is not like, I do fish two ways. I do a breaded fish and a battered fish. And so this is a battered fish, which means we're going to be dipping our fish into like a paste, like a liquid batter. It's battered fish. So we're going to start off with 1.5 cups of flour. Here we go. And now a half. And I just want to make sure, I always make more than enough batter because I don't want to run out of batter towards the end and then have to remake some more. So we've got 1.5 cups of our flour, and then we need 1.5 cups of water. I'm just going to rinse out my one that had my buttermilk in it. There we go. No need to make more dishes. There we go. 1.5. I find in the summer, there are so many dishes in our household because we have just the kids home all day and there's 7 of us at our house and it's just a lot. Before we add the water in, we're going to add in our seasoned salt. So it's kind of going to flavor with the French fries that we're making, or the chips that we're making. I'm gonna add in about, and this is the only like seasoning that's really going on these because it's a battered type fish. I'm gonna add in about a tablespoon of seasoned salt.
You have a question? Have you ever made beer battered fish?
I have made beer battered fish before, but my kids, they have like an aversion to anything that has beer added into it. I think it's lovely. I think it's delicious. They all can tell in there. I'm hoping that one day I can get them on it, or maybe I just need to find like a really light beer. I don't like beer. I don't drink it. So I'd have to find one that was very mild in flavor. We're going to add
I bet in their 20s it won't be about.
yeah, probably. We're going to add in a tablespoon of baking powder. So this is a half a tablespoon. So we're adding in a tablespoon of baking powder. And then we're going to give this a little mix, and then we're going to mix it with our fork.
What's the request to see the seasoning?
Yes. So this is Lowry's seasoned salt. It has such a really good savory flavor to it. I will say I even make chicken wings with this, where that's just the spice you put on it, because it has just a nice kind of savory flavor. And you can tell that there's paprika in it because it's going to give this, flour a little bit of a kind of orangish color, which will make our fry a little bit more golden. Okay, so we've got this mixed up, and then we're going to add in 1.5 cups of water. You could also use 1.5 cups of beer if you wanted to. Or I've seen it with seltzer water, and I almost want to try that as well, because that's going to give you a more of a crisp on it, so that beer has that natural carbonation in it, which interacts with the baking soda or the baking powder. And I'm wondering if doing a carbonated, like a club soda, would work really well too. But again, I never have that on hand. So that's one of those things I have to actually think ahead and get some and try it. But I've heard that makes a really good batter. But when in doubt, just keep it with your nice old fashioned. We're going to mix this until we have kind of a nice paste that isn't too thick, because you want it to coat up. So I'll see if I need to add a little bit more, because when you use the US like customary system where you use cups, sometimes you can have your flour packed down more, or you could have a pocket in it, which might mess with the consistency. So I think I'm going to need to add just a little bit more, because this is a bit thick. I don't want it quite this thick. I want to be able to coat it, but I want it to be able to not be a huge amount on there. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of batter. So we're going to just start with like a tablespoon at a time until I get there. And it's probably because I used kind of a heaping and I guesstimated my half cup. And so that's what I always say. You can't always be uber dependent on a recipe for the exact measurements, because sometimes you can measure up a cup heavier or lighter than in a recipe. So once you get known how to make it, you kind of understand the consistency that you want. I think that's what makes it really hard for me to write recipes for more of my savory dinner recipes, because I am one of those cooks who feels it versus being reliant on a recipe. There we go. This is about the consistency that I want. So it's going to be coated, but it's not going to just stick on there fully. Okay. And when we dip our fish, we're not going to dip them until we're about ready to fry them. Let me check my timing on. So 16 minutes. I'm going to start working on the coleslaw first. And then while we're frying, I'll do the tartar sauce as we fry and dip. I always try to time things. The fish I want to stay hot, of course, the longest. So coleslaw will come first. So I have just some cabbage here. I'm not going to use all of it. I'm just actually going to cut off a little bit of a head, because not everybody's a coleslaw lover, but I feel like it just fits well with fish and chips. So we're going to use this, and then I'm going to slice it nice and thin, and it will expand out as we do it. And then we'll peel up a carrot and add some of those carrots in, and we'll make a nice dressing using some mayo, a little bit of sugar, and some salt and pepper. Just keeping it simple. Now, you can always buy your own coleslaw at the store. Like buy the shredded lettuce cabbage mix and then make your own sauce. But I find that cabbage keeps really well in your fridge for a while. So you can buy ahead and it will last a long time. And that way I can use it for different things and different recipes. So we've got our basic kind of the shred here. And all you have to do is just slice it really, really thin to get that shredded texture to it. It's nothing special. And then I'm just kind of giving it a little toss. And then for the carrots, I'm going to first peel my carrot here, peel this top layer off. That's going to be more dry and a woody texture to the carrot. So I'm going to peel this off, get rid of it, and then I'm going to peel my carrot the rest and then give it a little chop. And that way I'll have these just lovely carrot strips in there that aren't too hard and a lot more tender. And you just need one carrot to kind of give you a little pop of color and a little bit of a crunch too. But I don't like to use the matchsticks carrots because I feel like they're just too thick. There we go. You see, you can just get all of that in there. And then I'll do a couple little chops over it so they're not super huge pieces. And then we can add these into the coleslaw. And again, it just makes it a nicer pop of color, and it breaks up the monotony of it, adds a little bit of sweetness that blends well with the dressing that we're going to be making with it. Okay. So I'm going to add in my carrots. There we go. We can give it a little toss. Perfect. And now let me get a small bowl, and we're going to make our mayo base for it, which I need mayonnaise. I've got my sugar, and let's not forget my apple cider vinegar. I like to use apple cider vinegar in it because it's a sweeter vinegar taste to it. And I think it pairs well with coleslaw. I don't make my coleslaw super sweet. I'm more of a savory girl, but I do put a little bit of sugar in it, but not too much. Okay. So we're going to do about a third cup of mayonnaise for this because it's a smaller batch. And then I'm going to do a cap full of vinegar, which is about a teaspoon. I don't do too much in it because I don't want it to be too pungent, especially because I don't use as much sugar. Sugar counteracts the tanginess of vinegar.
You have a question? Would red wine vinegar work?
Red wine vinegar would work. It would give you a brownerish looking sauce. So it wouldn't be as kind of like white or creamy white. It would have like a beigeish color to it, but it would definitely work. It would work along those flavor profiles. And then we're going to just add in about 2 tablespoons of sugar. Put this over here. And then let me grab my salt and pepper because you don't need to add a lot of salt, but you do need to add a little bit. Mayo has a lot of salt in it, so you don't need to go heavy on it as if there was no salt already added. So I'm going to add about like a half a teaspoon of salt, and then a pinch, which is about a fourth of a teaspoon of pepper. And this is going to be my base for the coleslaw. Just give it a little mix up, and then we can coat it. I always like to let my coleslaw sit and marinate for a little bit. I always think coleslaw tastes even better the next day. So I always say dress it, and then, if it's one of the first things you prep or it's something great that you can prep ahead. We're just going to add our dressing in here. And then I'm going to just stir and coat it. And as it will get a little bit more watery. It's not as creamy the longer it sits because the vegetables sweat out their natural liquids. But you want enough dressing in here to kind of coat all of that cabbage. There we go. Just making sure I get all of that goodness in there. There we go. So there is our beautiful coleslaw that is super simple to make and tastes way better than anything bought at the store. Okay, I'm going to check my peek over at my time. Perfect. About 10 minutes left on the cornbread. So I'm going to start heating up my oil here and getting ready to fry it. So I've got, I told you I was going through lots of bottles. So I poured some oil in there as I was going through, and then I had 2 more bottles. But I think I'm going to need even more. I want enough oil to kind of cover the bottom of my pan. I don't need enough that I'm going to completely cover them. As long as they're halfway covered or like a good third of the way, it will be fine. Let me grab out my last bottle of oil and we'll add some in here. Oh, this is one of those. There we go. It's one of those ones where there we go. The top doesn't want to come off. Okay. We're going to add just a little bit more. That should be good.
What type of fish?
This is Alaskan cod. So I find cod is one of my favorite fishes to do a batter on because it's that flaky, kind of meatier fish, and I feel like it can handle a batter. Like tilapia and catfish, I like to do a breading versus a batter. And so I think, but it works really, really well for this. We're going to just slide this over here. And I will say, if you can't get fresh cod, because fresh cod is sometimes hard to come by, frozen cod works well. That's what I'm using. You just want to make sure you give enough time to thaw it out. And then I always just go over and pat it completely dry, because if you have any little bit of that water left in there, sometimes it can pop out. And then when it hits the water or the oil, it can cause a big pop. So always try to pat it dry as best as possible. And same even with fresh. Fresh isn't going to be quite as, waterlogged as frozen. But again, pat it dry so you don't have any accidental drizzles. There we go. I'm going to wash my hands. Okay, and with this, I'm going to wait until my oil is heated up, because if you want your batter, especially with battered fish, it has to be hot right away. It can't be warming up, because then it will just be a soggy battered fish. So you got to make sure it's hot, that your oil's around like 350, 360 when you're cooking this. While my oil is heating up there, and before we do that, I can start prepping the homemade tartar sauce. This is my favorite part. I love tartar sauce, but only homemade, or when they're restaurants. I do not like store-bought tartar sauce because it's so chemically tasting, and you really don't need that many ingredients. So we're going to use a little bit of red onion for this, and it's got to be red onion. You can't really sub it out for any other onion, because red onion's sweet and has a very mild flavor, and it's best eaten raw or in dips. I mean, you could possibly use a shallot if you had that, but you can't sub this out for a yellow onion. It just wouldn't work. And I'm going to just mince this up nice and small, because I want my onions in there to add this great flavor, but I don't want them necessarily to be like huge and chunky, especially since we're going to be adding in some pickles as well. So I'm going to just kind of mince over them a little bit. And this is going to give me about a tablespoon, maybe a little more, like a tablespoon and a half of minced onion. There's a couple little carrots from our coleslaw in there, but that's okay. So we've got our minced onion. Keep my eye. I'm going to just check to see how hot it is. I don't think it's ready yet, but I do my little dot check. Not yet. It barely even sizzled. And then we're going to add in a pickle. So you want just one good sized pickle will work. I like to use a dill pickle because it's salty, not a sweet pickle. You want that salty flavor in it. A zesty pickle is fine, but no sweet pickles. And you got to use mayonnaise, not Miracle Whip for this as well. Miracle Whip, I find, is sweet. Okay, and then we're going to essentially do the same thing with our pickle that we did with our onion. We're going to just mince it up nice and small so we have some just nice little bits in there. And then I'm going to go back over and kind of chop over it the other way as well. And these are going to be like the chunky parts of your tartar sauce. Here we go. I think my oil is starting to get hot because that little drip that I put in there is starting to sizzle. Let's get these chopped up. And let's check our oil. And make sure when you do the drop test, just a drop, not a lot, because otherwise you'll burn yourself. It will pop. So we've got a good sizzle. So I started it on my 8, and I'm going to turn it down to a 6 right now. Let me grab a fork. Trying to think the best way, because I got to dip these. And I can't. There's already a fork in there. So this can get the messy part. I might just do it with my hands. So we're going to dip it in and completely cover and batter up your fish as best as possible. And then once you have it battered, we're going to put it right in here to start frying up. And so you want to make sure you coat it up on both sides. Nice kind of thick coat will give you a nice kind of, there we go, batter to it. And you can see it's kind of puffing up. And I'll know that it will be ready to flip when it starts to get kind of golden brown. I'm going to turn my oil down to a 4 because I want it hot, but I don't want to keep it scalding hot. Otherwise, I'll burn it before it's had a chance to cook my fish through. And we're going to do, I think I'll do 4 pieces at a time. You don't want to crowd your fish when you're frying them because they will, your oil will drop down in temperature and then you won't get a crispy fry on it. There we go. I'm going to wash my hands up. And then I'm going to get a baking sheet out. I'm going to line it with some paper towels so that when we are ready to take this out of the oven or out of the frying pan after it's fried both sides, I'm going to lay it on paper towels to absorb that extra grease. You could also do it on a oven drying, like a cookie drying rack, a cooling rack. I find paper towels work really well for this. It's kind of sops it up. And so that's what I use. While these are frying here, I'm going to give a little rotate. I'm going to finish up my coleslaw here. So we're going to add in about a half a cup of mayo, which is going to get me probably to the very end of this jar. You got to use fresh mayo, like a jar that you know you've opened up recently. I have found that mayo has a tendency to pick up the flavors in your fridge. And so if you've had it in there, it's not going to have a great, like, fresh flavor in it. And it can really, so I always buy it new or at the, the season. Luckily, I use a lot of mayo, so we're kind of going through it. I've got a bunch of fresh dill here, about a teaspoon. If you don't have fresh, you can use dried dill, and you would use about a half a teaspoon for this. We're going to just mince it up, and we're going to add this to the mayo mixture, and then a squeeze of lemon juice. There we go. And then we'll add a little bit of salt and pepper in just a second, but I'm going to check out my fish here, see how it is frying. We've got a perfect kind of golden one on this side. Looking gorgeous. Beautiful. I find the best way to flip these is to do it with the tongs and the spatula. That way you're not, the tongs, you'll grab too much and you'll rip that batter off. And like you can hold it on the edge and then flip it with the spatula, and that seems to work really well on getting it off without it falling apart. Okay. Here's our cornbread. We'll finish that up when we come back. So let me slide these guys right over here because we're going to use them next. And then let's go grab our cornbread. Grab a trivet. Look at that gorgeous cornbread. I'm going to give it a little feel. Perfect. No goopy part in the middle. That's how you really want to test it, is to make sure that it's not like super spongy in the middle. That means it's a little underdone. You want it to be firm. I'm going to move these up and we're going to let them roast for the last few minutes because I said those always take the longest. But what we're going to do with our honey butter cornbread is you're going to take a fork, so kind of like a pork bread, like a poke cake, and you're going to poke your cornbread all over, and then we're going to brush it with the honey butter glaze that we made using, a 1/4 cup of butter, 2 tablespoons of honey. And we're going to glaze it twice. That first one, really let it set in, and then the final one right before we serve it. But those little pokes are going to ensure that that honey butter like soaks into the cornbread and makes it nice and sweet. So here we go. So just be really generous with it as we glaze over the tops of each cornbread. This is also going to keep your cornbread really, really moist, which is what you want. So again, we're going to dabble over. I've used up about half of my honey butter on here, and it's soaking in through those little holes that we poked in there. And then right before we serve it, I like to glaze it one last time because this will all soak into that cornbread. Okay, let's check these out. Not quite. Turn it up just a smidge. Okay, let's add in our pinch of pepper. And then again, we're going to add in a little bit of salt, but you don't need a lot because mayo is already pretty salty. So we're going to add in just a pinch or two. And this will be our tartar sauce. And it will be it's so much better than anything you get at the store. And it's so simple to make. There we go. And just mix it up so all of those ingredients are together. Okay, let's check on these guys. Seeing how our first round is frying up. Oh, we're getting there. I'm looking for it to be about the same color as it is. You can see we've got this just lovely kind of crispy edge to it. And you don't want to cook it so hot that you crisp up both sides, kind of like a funnel cake that cooks in like 3 minutes. You want to cook it hot but lower, like so that lower end of hot, so that you cook the cod all the way through. Otherwise, you'll have raw fish on the inside. Okay. Those are just about ready here. Let's go grab our potatoes out of the oven because then these will be about ready to come off and I can plate up our first round. No need to make you guys watch me fry up the rest of all the for the kids. We're a large family and I find that sometimes it can be a bit much. Okay, so here are our crispy oven fries. And when I flip them over, you're going to see they're going to be a lot more crispy on the other side. That's going to give you that nice kind of little crispy chip flavor to it. And again, I cook these at 300 or 350, but they are probably best cooked at a 425 on a convection bake. But I want to just slide under. You can see we've got these nice kind of edges. I'm going to scoop them up. Caught one, almost lost it. And I just I like to shove my spatula underneath them first, because if you wait too long, then they're not going to slide off of your baking dish. There we go. Okay, so we've got our chips here. I always like to keep them piled up together because I feel like it keeps them a little bit softer, keeps them a little bit more tender versus getting too crunchy. Looking good. So we've got our first, both sides. Always put your grease side down first, because that is what's going to have the most oil in it, and you want it to soak up into the paper towel. I'll let that one, just one more second on that one. I want it to get a nice golden brown color on it. There we go. Okay, I'm going to batter these last ones, and then we'll drop them in, and then we will plate up our dinner. So I'm going to coat these up with our batter again, just like it. I find the best way is just to do it with your finger, but you could always do them with like a fork. Problem is they're kind of slippery, so they might slide off. Here we go. And then again, make sure if you're using frozen, make sure you blot them dry so they're not super wet, to prevent any kind of bubbles of like water splashing out and popping in the oil. There we go. I'm hoping I can get all of these in, but I don't know. I think I might have to save this. You know what? I'm just going to save these last three for a fry after that. But let me wash my hands. And now,
You got a couple questions on how the batter's made.
So the batter, it's really, really simple. First of all, we will upload this video to the link on the page. So if you want to recreate it at home, you'll have the full recipe there. But I just mixed 1.5 cups of flour with 1.5 cups of water. And then I used about a tablespoon of Lowry seasoned salt and a tablespoon of baking powder. And that's where you get this kind of pop up, that, little puff from it that gives you that. I'm gonna glaze my honey butter cornbread one last time, and then we can kind of serve it up. I'll let these flavors really soak in there. My kids also love to then take the remaining honey butter and dip their cornbread in it as if they hadn't had enough already. Okay, let me bring this stuff over here, and we will do our plate up of dinner. So I feel like this is like the quintessential Long John Silver's menu that you had growing up back when Long John Silver's was a thing, or Captain D's. Except instead of hush puppies, they've got cornbread, which is better. Okay, let's start. We've got our beautiful battered fish with our nice seasoned salt on it, that we fried up in oil, and that baking powder gives it a nice puff and a crisp. Followed by our homemade coleslaw with a slightly sweet mayonnaise dressing, not too sweet because I like it more savory. And then we have our home fries that we seasoned with Lowry seasoned salt, and we baked up in the oven. And then let's not forget our honey butter cornbread coming right out of the oven. Nice, hot, delicious. And of course, for dipping our fish in, you can't do it without a good helping of tartar sauce. That kind of just makes it perfect. Well, guys, Thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what I'm making for my family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Turn this down a lot. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on the page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, all you have to do is go to that link, search for what we cooked for, and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gear and gadgets in it, the pans that I use, my spatulas, everything in there if you want to check that out. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.